Okay, let's talk about watercolors. You have 3 different types of watercolors in this classroom. The first being you're going to have tube watercolors. And since this is an advanced class, you can use tube watercolors in here if we have them and they're not empty. This is trays, which you used in Art 1. They're easier to manage and clean up because basically you just have to put this tray back in the container on the cart and clean your brushes. The other one is watercolor pencils, which we also used in Art 1. You have to make sure that the watercolor emblem is on the pencil. And these are Crayola. I have a different brand, a Sargent brand. If you get a hold of those, they're terrible. So I wouldn't even use them. I've often thought of throwing them. I often think of throwing them away. But I kept them because we bought them. So anyway, these all 3 can be used together. Maybe not on the same project. You may just want to use trays if you're making a galaxy. But sometimes a galaxy, like to get the vivid color, you need to switch to something like a tube paint because you're just not going to get as vivid of color with these trays. So let's talk about these trays. If you're new in here and you don't know what I'm talking about when I say trays. Okay, we have our water bucket and I have several brushes. You notice the bristles on these brushes are very soft and they look like they're going to hold a ton of water. That's a watercolor brush, not a teeny tiny acrylic brush. You need a good watercolor brush. To get the trays going, you have to put a little bit of water in the tray to get the pigment working in the specific one you want. So you can put more water in it. You can work on the side of your plastic tray to kind of play with it a little bit. And as you learn on your techniques video that you were supposed to do before getting ready for this silhouette project, that you can sponge this up with paper towel if you need to. If it's dry, you can magic eraser it. You can use masking. You can use masking tape. Just be aware that masking tape sometimes pulls the paper back off, so you have to be careful with that. But that's how you use the trays. And then you just rinse out your brush really, really well. And you can put these up, preferably right side up in the bucket over there. The watercolor pencils I just started using in class probably 2 years ago, and you use them just like a colored pencil. And if you want your little circle here to be faded to where it's lighter on this side than that side, you can put your blue down and maybe put a little bit of a darker blue. And you need to sharpen these with just a normal pencil sharpener. Put your blue down. You don't want to put too much pigment on the paper because you don't need that much, because you're going to pull the watercolor either out or you're going to push the water towards it. So you've got to learn how, and this has a lot of water in my brush, so I'm going to tap it a little bit to control that. So I'm going to start in this lighter area, see how that works, and then go over the blue without putting too much back in the other area. And see, I got a lot of water in there and it's kind of moving around a bit. So you have to play around with watercolor pencils to see how they're going to react to what you're doing. And then you can just brush with them, and that's very, very faint. So I just picked up the pigment here and moved it here. The other is the tubes. On the tubes, they have like a binder inside. So if it's got a clear liquid inside, it's a binder. You literally, see, that's the binder I was talking about. You might need to knead the tube a little bit. Let me see if I can do that. These are pretty old. Been in the closet a while. So kneading the tube. Just shake it up a bit. It's still a little watery, but let's get to the paint. Let me just squeeze it out. Okay, here we go. This is how much paint you need. This little dab. That's it. This goes a long way, especially in a 45-minute class. Unless you're painting a big project and you really, really, really know what you're doing, you don't need more than that. And you can work in a tray. So let me move this over to like one of these wells. I can find one that's kind of yellow. This is an old tray that I need to wash. So you have it in your well, and you can add water to it. You can use the one beside it if it has blue. And the good thing about trays and watercolors is once they dry, sometimes you can bring back the pigment. See how that green happened there? Because that was blue, and now I got this cool teal. So you can still bring back the pigment once it's dry. And if it's just a little bitty bit in the bottom, but see how rich that is compared to the, you know, the elementary trays. So you can get good pigment with that, and that would make a great galaxy actually. And you just kind of blend and mix. Keep your brush washed out, but I could probably pull pigment off of this. Oh, and this is really dry, and see, it still comes up. But this was really good watercolors. I don't think these are Reeves. These were from SCAD when I was there one summer. But see, it's beautiful. So that's your basic tools of watercolor. You definitely need your water bucket, paper towels. If you don't have paper towels, you need to hunt me down or hunt the janitor down and get some if you're working on this project. And then you can use any of these. I also have liquid watercolor. If you get into this project and you've completed some of the landscapes and you want to try liquid watercolor, that's something that we can do, and I can show you how to use that. It's just a little messy. So anyway, that's watercolor, the basics of watercolor. Make sure you have watercolor paper. That's what I was painting on here, and it's got a little bit more tooth, and it should be labeled in the art room. Or mixed media. Mixed media, it can take wet or dry media. And this is 140-pound mixed media paper. Do not waste this paper. Do not waste the watercolor paper because it's expensive compared to other papers we have in here. And if everybody's just willy-nilly wasting it, then we won't have any very long. You can also take a magic eraser, just a piece, wet it a little bit, and once your watercolor dries, you can take watercolor back off your paper. And I'll have a few of those too in the watercolor area. So if you've made a mistake and you got a little bit too much, but you don't want to do it too much because the paper starts eating the paper away. So this is not like really, really expensive. So anyway, have fun.